This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Max and Mia podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Mia. Really glad to have you here with us today.
We hope you are having an excellent day.
So, before we get into today's episode, how was your morning, Max?
Honestly, pretty good. I had coffee, took a short walk, and here I am. Nothing special, but a good start. What about you?
Same here. I woke up a little early, made breakfast, and I was actually looking forward to today's episode because I think it's going to be really useful.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk about what we have today.
This is a classic episode. We're going through different everyday situations, but with a twist. Everything today is in the past tense. Past simple, past descriptions, memories. It's all about looking back.
And we're starting with something a lot of people love to talk about: childhood. In our first audio, you'll hear two characters, Ruben and Mina, each sharing memories of when they were young.
Now, here's something to pay attention to. Both of them are talking about similar things, but the way they speak is quite different. Ruben keeps it simple and direct, while Mina gives a bit more detail and uses more varied language.
So as you listen, try to notice those differences. It's a great way to see how the same idea can be expressed at different levels. Let's go.
So, you want to talk about when we were kids?
Yeah, I think it's a nice topic. I always enjoy thinking about those years. Oh, there's something comforting about it, you know?
Yeah. I liked being a kid. Life was easier.
Totally. I grew up in a small town in Portugal near the coast. The pace of life there was really slow, which I didn't appreciate at the time, but looking back, it was actually quite lovely.
I grew up in a city. It was big and loud, but I liked it. There were always people outside.
Oh, that sounds fun. I had the opposite experience. My town was very quiet, especially in the mornings. I used to wake up early and just sit outside with my grandmother while she had her tea. We didn't talk much, but it felt peaceful.
That sounds nice. My mornings were different. My mom woke me up for school. I didn't want to go. But I went.
I think most kids felt that way. I didn't mind school that much, honestly. I liked reading, so I was okay in most classes. But I was terrible at anything involving numbers.
Me too. Math was hard. I didn't understand it. My teacher was okay, but the class was boring.
I know that feeling. My math teacher was quite strict, so most of us were just too nervous to even ask questions. I think that made it worse, actually.
Yeah. After school, I played outside with my friends. We played football a lot, sometimes until it was dark.
That's such a classic childhood memory. I spent a lot of time outdoors too, but more on my own. I liked exploring the area around my house. There was a small river not too far, and I used to go there and just sit and watch the water. It sounds boring, but I genuinely loved it.
That doesn't sound boring. It sounds calm. I think I needed more noise when I was young. Now I like quiet.
People change, right? I actually became noisier as I grew up. As a child, I was quite shy, but at some point, something shifted and I just became more comfortable around people.
I was not shy. I talked a lot. Maybe too much. My mom said that.
That's sweet. I think talkative kids are usually the ones who are really curious about everything. Were you?
I think so. I asked a lot of questions. I wanted to know how things worked, like machines, cars, things like that.
That's interesting. I was more curious about people and stories. I used to ask my grandmother to tell me about her life when she was young, and she had so many things to share. Those conversations stayed with me for a long time.
That's really nice. I didn't talk much with my grandparents. They lived far, but when I saw them, it was good. We ate together and watched TV.
Those simple moments are the ones you remember the most, aren't they? Just being together without really doing anything special.
Yeah, I miss that.
That last line from Ruben got me. I miss that. Just 3 words, and somehow it says everything.
Right. And it's funny because my childhood was a bit like his in that sense. Loud neighborhood, always playing outside, coming home when it got dark. My parents didn't really worry back then. Different times.
Mine was closer to Mina's, actually. I was quite a solitary kid. Not unhappy, just content with my own company. I had a spot in the garden where I used to read for hours. Nobody bothered me there.
See, that contrast is exactly what makes this conversation so interesting to listen to. And it's a great moment to pause and look at the language. Let's talk about what Ruben did well and where Mina took things further.
So, starting with Ruben. His sentences were short and clear. I grew up in a city. It was big and loud. Subject, verb, done. No extra information, and that's completely fine for communication. You understood him perfectly, right?
Exactly. And he used very common past tense verbs. Liked, played, went, lived. All regular or very frequent irregular verbs. Nothing complicated, but all correct. That's a solid A2 level.
Now, Mina built on the same ideas but added layers. Take this moment. The pace of life there was really slow, which I didn't appreciate at the time, but looking back, it was actually quite lovely. That's one sentence doing a lot of work. She's contrasting the past and the present, using a relative clause, and expressing a change in perspective.
And she also used used to several times. I used to wake up early. I used to go there. That structure is really useful for talking about habits in the past, things you did regularly but don't do anymore. Ruben didn't use it, which is typical at a more basic level.
Another thing worth noticing is the vocabulary. Ruben kept it simple. Nice, hard, boring, good. Mina reached for words like comforting, peaceful, strict, genuinely. Same feelings, but expressed with more precision.
And that's the goal, isn't it? As you progress, you don't just learn more words, you learn how to be more specific, how to add nuance. Ruben's English communicates. Mina's English paints a picture.
Well said. And both are valid depending on where you are in your journey. Don't be discouraged if you're at Ruben's level right now. He was clear, natural, and easy to follow. That already takes work.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep moving. Our second audio today is a little different in tone.
Yes. We're going from warm childhood memories to something a bit more chaotic. Picture this. Two friends sitting down for a coffee, and one of them starts telling the other about a holiday that went completely off the rails.
That's Deborah and Kevin, both native speakers, so the language here is going to feel faster, more natural, with the kind of expressions you'd hear in a real conversation between friends. It's a great chance to hear how natives actually tell stories.
Pay attention to how they use the past to build suspense, add drama, and keep each other engaged. Storytelling in English has its own rhythm, and this conversation is full of it. Let's listen.
Okay, so you mentioned something last week about a trip. What happened exactly?
Oh, God, where do I even start? Okay, so you know how I'd been planning this trip to Greece for like months?
Yeah, you were so excited about it.
So excited. I had everything booked, the flights, the hotel, a boat tour. I even had a whole list of restaurants. I was completely prepared. Or so I thought.
Uh-oh.
So the first sign that things were going wrong was at the airport. My flight got delayed by 4 hours. Fine. Annoying, but fine. I sat there, had a coffee, read a bit. Then they announced it was delayed again.
How long in total?
7 hours. I got to Athens at 2 in the morning instead of 7 in the evening. And of course, the hotel had given away my room.
No way.
Yes way. Apparently, they had a policy where if you don't check in by midnight, they assume you're not coming. I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. So I'm standing there at the front desk at 2 in the morning, absolutely exhausted, and the guy is just... He was very apologetic, but basically useless.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
No, laugh. It's fine. It's funny now. It was not funny then. So they found me another room in a different hotel, smaller, noisier, right next to a street where apparently people just gather and talk very loudly until 4 in the morning.
Amazing. So when did things start to turn around?
Day 2, sort of. I woke up late because I hadn't slept, dragged myself out, found a little cafe near the water, and honestly, that was lovely. I had the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I'm not exaggerating.
See? Silver lining.
Tiny silver lining, because then I remembered I had the boat tour booked for that afternoon and I had completely forgotten to check the meeting point. So I ran across half the city in 30-degree heat, got there just in time, dripping, out of breath, and the tour guide looked at me like I had arrived from another dimension.
Was the tour at least good?
It was actually stunning. The water, the light, the views. For about 2 hours, I forgot everything that had gone wrong. And then on the way back, I dropped my phone in the sea.
Deborah!
I know. It just slipped. 1 second it was in my hand, the next it was just gone. And that was day 2.
There were more days?
4 more days. But honestly, after losing the phone, something in me just let go. I had no map, no camera, no way to check anything. I just walked around and figured things out as I went, and weirdly, those last few days were the best part of the whole trip.
That's actually kind of beautiful.
Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to protect.
The phone in the sea. I did not see that coming.
I love that she said, it just slipped. So matter of fact at that point, like she had completely given up being surprised by anything.
That's what a truly terrible holiday does to you. You reach a point where you just accept it. I had something similar once. Nothing that dramatic, but a trip where so many small things went wrong that by day 3 I was just laughing at everything.
There's actually something quite freeing about that moment, isn't there? When you stop fighting it. Anyway, let's look at the language, because there's a lot to work with here.
So the first thing to notice is how Deborah tells the story. She doesn't just list events, she builds tension. I was completely prepared, or so I thought. That pause, that little reversal, it's a classic storytelling move in English.
Exactly. Native speakers do that a lot. They set something up and then knock it down. It keeps the listener hooked. Kevin's reactions help too. They're not just filler, they're signals that he's engaged and they push Deborah to keep going.
That back and forth is so natural, and it's something learners often find hard to replicate. Knowing when to jump in, what to say, how much. It's a real skill.
Another thing worth pointing out is the use of had. Deborah says things like, I'd been planning this trip for months, and I had everything booked. That's the past perfect, and she uses it to show that those things happened before the story even starts. It gives context, a kind of background layer.
And then when the chaos begins, she switches to simple past. The flight got delayed. The hotel gave away my room. I dropped my phone. Short, punchy sentences. The grammar itself creates pace. Things are happening fast and the language reflects that.
Also worth noting, expressions like off the rails, silver lining, figured things out as I went. These are really natural phrases that you'd hear constantly in everyday English. Not formal, not textbook, just real.
If you heard something you didn't understand, that's completely normal at this level. The goal isn't to catch every word. It's to follow the story, feel the rhythm, and pick up patterns over time.
And on that note, we have one more conversation for you today. This one takes us somewhere quite different.
Morgan and Tom. Two people who've just finished university and are both dealing with something a lot of people know very well. A first day at work that did not go according to plan.
What makes this one special from a grammar point of view is that it's full of past perfect in action. Not explained, not highlighted, just used naturally the way people actually speak. You'll hear things like, I hadn't realized, they had already started, nobody had told me. That structure had plus a past participle is doing important work throughout the whole conversation.
So as you listen, pay attention to those moments. Ask yourself, why is the past perfect being used here and not just simple past? What came first? That's the key question with this tense. Let's go.
Okay, so tell me, how bad was it?
I mean, it wasn't a disaster. It just wasn't what I expected at all.
Same. I thought I'd feel more ready, like I'd spent 4 years studying for exactly this kind of job. And then I walked in on Monday and just felt completely lost.
Yes, that's exactly it. The thing is, nobody had told me there was a team meeting first thing. Like, I arrived at 9 thinking I'd have time to settle in, get a coffee, find my desk, and they had already started the meeting. I walked into the room and everyone just looked up at me.
Oh no.
And I hadn't even figured out where to sit. So I just kind of hovered near the door for a second. My manager waved me over and I sat down and tried to look like I knew what was going on, which I absolutely did not.
What were they talking about?
I have no idea. Something about a project deadline that had apparently been moved forward. Everyone seemed stressed about it. And I just sat there nodding because I hadn't had any context. I hadn't read anything about current projects. I didn't even know the names of the people in the room.
To be fair, how were you supposed to? They hadn't sent you anything beforehand. I checked my emails 3 times the week before I started, and there was nothing. No handbook, no schedule, nothing.
Exactly. I'd assumed there would be some kind of induction, someone showing you around, explaining how things work, but no. They just sort of pointed at a desk and expected you to get on with it.
Mine was similar, although the people were really kind, which helped. My team took me out for lunch on the first day, which I hadn't expected at all. That was genuinely lovely.
Oh, that's nice. I ate at my desk, alone, because I hadn't realized there was a kitchen on the 3rd floor, and I didn't want to ask.
Tom.
I know, but everything felt so new, and I just didn't want to seem like I didn't know anything, which was ridiculous. Because of course I didn't know anything. It was my first day.
I think that's the thing nobody prepares you for, the gap between what you'd studied and what actually happens at work. I'd learned so much theory, but none of it told me how to use the internal systems or who to ask when something went wrong or even just what the culture was like.
Yes, and the software. I hadn't used half the programs they expected me to know. I'd seen the names before, but I'd never actually worked with them. So I spent most of the afternoon just quietly figuring things out on my own and hoping no one noticed.
Did it get better by the end of the week?
Honestly, a bit. By Thursday, I'd worked out the basics and I'd spoken to a few people properly. There was one guy on my team who had started just 2 months before me, and he was really helpful. He remembered exactly what it had felt like and didn't make me feel bad for not knowing things.
That makes such a difference. Someone who hasn't forgotten what it's like to be new.
Completely. I think by Friday, I'd stopped feeling like I was about to be found out. Only took 5 days.
That's progress. Honestly, same.
I didn't want to seem like I didn't know anything. Which was ridiculous because of course I didn't know anything. I felt that deeply.
I think most people have a version of that story. Mine involved accidentally replying all to a company-wide email on my second day. But we don't need to get into that.
We absolutely do need to get into that at some point, but not today. Let's look at what Morgan and Tom were doing with the language, because this conversation is genuinely packed with useful grammar.
So the big focus here is the past perfect, and the key thing to understand is what it's for. Every time you heard had followed by a past participle, it was marking something that happened before another point in the past. It's about sequence.
A good example is when Tom says they had already started the meeting. The meeting starting happened before Tom arrived. Both things are in the past, but one came first. The past perfect is how English signals that order.
And compare that to simple past. I walked into the room, and everyone looked up. Those two things happened at roughly the same time, one right after the other. No need for past perfect there. The contrast between the two is really clear in this conversation if you listen back.
Another great moment is, I hadn't realized there was a kitchen on the third floor. He didn't know before a specific point, specifically before the moment he ate alone at his desk. That hadn't is doing quiet but important work.
Morgan also does something interesting when she says, I'd assumed there would be some kind of induction. That I'd assumed tells us she had formed that expectation before she arrived, and then reality didn't match it. The past perfect sets up the gap between expectation and experience.
Which is also just very human and relatable. And that's worth saying. The past perfect isn't some complicated formal tense that only appears in textbooks. It shows up every time someone tells a story that involves layers of time, which is basically every real conversation.
If today's episode felt like a lot, that's okay. You don't need to master everything at once. Even just being able to recognize the past perfect when you hear it is a real step forward.
And the more you listen, the more natural it starts to feel. That's really the whole idea behind what we do here.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. 3 conversations, 3 very different situations, and a lot of English to sit with.
If you made it this far, genuinely, thank you. It means a lot. This kind of episode takes time to put together, and knowing that people actually listen all the way through makes it worth it.
If you found it useful, the best thing you can do is subscribe. That way you won't miss the next one. And if you know someone who's learning English and might enjoy this, pass it along. It really helps.
We'll be back soon with more conversations, more analysis, and hopefully a few more laughs along the way. Take care of yourselves.
See you next time. To keep taking your English to the next level, click on the next video or explore the others we've made for you.